So much from the bottom of my heart. I just want to say very quickly, thank you Lilia, thank you Bill, Tony, and everyone who I've met here over the last 2 days. It's been a phenomenal journey. Kind of the thing that really springs to my mind is run, Forrest, run. Because that's all I wanted to do before my near death. I want to start as much as possible, and if I could just say that I haven't got a great deal of experience in public talking, so I may get a wee bit emotional, I may stop for a few seconds just to gather my breath. So, off we go. As you heard, Raymond O'Brien. My mother is German, my father was Irish. I have 2 brothers and a beautiful sister. Father was in the army. 2 brothers were in the army. So I kind of lived with PTSD within the household. Mother was a German Jew. Family were extremely persecuted. Didn't find out that I was Jewish until probably 1995. So that's how much she kept it all hidden from me. But one of the first things that I remember when I was within my family was the point of birth. And it shocked my mother when I said, I remember being born, Mum. No, you don't. I said, no, I don't. I said, no, I do. I described the actual delivery room, and she was quite stunned. So we lived in Germany. Father was based in Germany, and he would go and off on many different campaigns wherever he was going. So it left my mother just to take care of us. And as we lived in Germany, Mother had some brothers, and we used to visit them every Sunday. And after a Sunday meal, it was a big thing in Germany to go out to the ornamental gardens and walk around. And I think at this time, I was maybe about 4 or 5, I'd say 5. And we were in these ornamental gardens, and I was holding on to Mum. And just up in the distance was an old lady, bent over with a stick, dressed completely in black with a really wide brimmed hat and a black veil. And we stood beside her. I was here, Mother was here, and she was called Oma, which is German for grandmother. Although she wasn't my grandmother. She wasn't my mother's mother. Mum and Oma started arguing, and I became aware of this argument. After Omar had left, I looked up at Mum and said, what was the argument about? She said, Omar wanted to take you away to start teaching you. She said, but I wouldn't allow it. I told her that I will teach you. And we left it at that. Now, in my childhood, it was only by coming here, to be quite honest with you, when I'd realized and heard that many people were seeing beings of light. And at such a young age, so was I. But it was only by being here that triggered that memory and kind of fitted that last piece into the jigsaw. Used to always play around with the drains just outside the kitchen. And this light would appear, and I assumed it was the sun. And it was so bright, but it didn't hurt my eyes. And this light would talk to me. But I kept it to myself. At this time, I still had my 2 brothers. We were very close, still are. We don't see each other very often. As life progressed, we moved from place to place, different postings. And one of the things that really sticks in my mind now is one school in particular. We came from Germany, and we came to somewhere up in Scotland. And I remember standing at the front of the class, little tiny soul, looking up at the teacher, and she said, this is Raymond, he's from Germany, and we're looking to pair him up with somebody. And I straight away spotted who I was going to be paired with. And to my relief, the teacher picked the child who I was to pair up with. So already I was kind of getting an idea of what it's like to be a seer within my family. Now, it wasn't a practical teaching, but it was more sort of a telepathic teaching. So as time progressed, went through school, went into work, had some very, very unusual careers, probably more than fingers and toes. But one of them was I was a grave digger for just a few years. So I've always had this sort of affinity with death in one form or another. The reason why I started this talk with Run, Forest, Run is because I knew that I should have been paying attention to what my mother had argued with Omar about. So I turned to drink and drugs to calm this down, and this is where the Run, Forest, Run came. I was afraid of what was in front of me. So I kept on. My mother knew this, but in the meantime, I became aware that I was able to see illnesses on people. Still kept this to myself, didn't say anything, carried on at normal. The people around me were into the same paradigm as I was, which was drink and drugs. And I was happy there because I was isolated from the messages that I was getting. I kind of knew that my two brothers were the same as me, but none of us really spoke about it. But there was that connection. So, still running and running, still running and running. Not really paying too much attention to what I should be doing. And then, probably about 14, 15 years ago, I know we jump forward a bit, but I'm very conscious of the time that we have, is I joined the Healing Trust as I wanted to find out more about what it was that I could do with seeing. So I became a member. In the 2 years that it took, you had to do your logs and describe the sort of work you had been doing. And through the lady who introduced me to this, she was very much into horses. She had her own horses. And I explained to her about being a seer, and that I hadn't really developed it. I've been quite quiet about it. Come to the stables, Ray, she said, and tell me what you see on these horses. So I did, and to my wonderment and disappointment, I was seeing things on these horses. You can't hear me?
You mumble a mic up a little closer to your mouth.
Okay, thank you. How's that? Is that better? Okay, I was trying to speak more clearly. I do apologise. So, I was invited to come and look at these horses. And there was 5 in total. Now, the owners of the horses knew what was wrong with these horses. First one stood in the stables, not used to being around horses. They kind of frightened me. I was from London, spent most of my life, adult life, living in London. So these great big limbering things with their hooves just kind of had me sort of, oof. So I spoke to the horse within my mind, you need to tell me what's wrong with you. And the horse lit up as if it had light bulbs all over it. It had about 4 or 5 ailments. This was the first horse. The owners were in the stables with me, along with my friend. Went to the next stables. They hadn't said nothing to me. They hadn't said, you're correct, you're wrong. We got to the last horse, who was a well-known racehorse who'd just come back from New Zealand, I do believe. And I stood in front of him, and they're kind of now waiting, the people who I was with were waiting for me to say something else about this horse. So they clearly had already known that I'd spotted ailments and past operations on these horses, but they didn't say anything. So I'm now a little bit, I'm at the 5th horse, beautiful big horse, whose name was Sparky. Stood in front of him, I felt the sensation of the people behind me going, is he going to get this? Is he going to see what's wrong with this horse? And feeling that, it panicked me. So openly, I asked the horse, I don't know what's wrong with you, Sparky, so you're going to have to tell me. The next thing I've heard is this telepathic voice from the horse. He said, I'm blind in my right eye. I've turned to the owners. I said, don't laugh, but your horse has told me that he's blind in his right eye. They shook their heads and said, no, you're wrong. But the other 4 horses, I can't believe it. You've even got the past operations, you've spotted this and you spotted that. I thought, great. So we left it at that, and I was happy with getting 4 out of 5. Still a little bit disappointed that I didn't get it bang on, but I thought, well, we're still in training, Ray. I was asked to come to California to look at some other horses. So I've gone to California, went there with my sister, got to the 2 ranches, standing there, looking at the horses. My phone goes. It was a text message. And it was from the owner of Sparky, who wanted to tell me that Sparky, in between the time that I had seen him and the moment when the text came, was they had to take him to the optometrist because Sparky kept bumping into things. And bearing in mind that he was a real pedigree horse, I think it was something to do with show jumping. So they needed to get him looked at. So the reply came back, Sparky is blind in his right eye, and they found that he has some sort of eye disease. But he developed an unusual white stripe across the eye. And they hadn't seen this before. I don't know whether it was something to do with me. I honestly don't know. But what it did to me, it had a profound impact on, you have to change, Ray. You really have to change your lifestyle at the moment. Still drinking, still smoking. Thought I could do this part-time. I was now a qualified plumbing and heating engineer, running my own small company. And I was kind of happy with life. So I thought, well, I could still do this, and I could still do my normal work. And I wouldn't have to completely give up and not face that fear of the unknown. That threw me probably right up to my cardiac arrest, really. So we carried on in that vein. I visited my mother. I was working in London, and I thought, I'll go and see Mum. Just felt I had to go and see her. Sat down at the kitchen table with her, and she asked me in German, well, how are things going? And I thought she meant about my business. Well, it's all right, Mum, busy as ever. Yeah? No, she said, I'm not talking about your business. I'm talking about the other thing. And it kind of shocked me because this is really one of the first times that she'd picked me up on it. I said, it's all right, Mum. I said, I'm getting these downloads. I went, but enough taking a long time. She said, if you got it all at once, you couldn't handle it. And I thought, well, that's a bit cheeky. So she wagged her finger at me. If you don't change, something really bad is going to happen to you. Now, I have done naughty things, nothing criminal, but I wasn't a good man, let's put it that way. And I kind of knew that. And I went, Mum, it'll have to be pretty bad. So because you know some of the things that I've been up to. Don't you worry, she said. It will be pretty bad. That was the end of it. There was a staleness to the conversation after that. And I left, got my motorcycle, drove back to Kent, still kind of thinking about that. What she said to me was absolutely true. I knew I had to change, but it was that fear of the unknown. So I started to get palpitations of the heart. Still smoking, still drinking, still being a bit of a fool. Couple of weeks really, after I'd seen my mum, I was in the garden. My next door neighbour had a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. It would belong to her daughter. And they would come to visit every now and again. And at the top of my garden, I have a sound room where I play guitar. That's how I meditate. I'm sitting at the top, and my beautiful cat, called Mr. B, came up and sat beside me. But on the other side of the fence was the dog. And I heard the dog as clear as I'm talking to you guys today tell me that I'm going to kill your cat. I was sitting down and I said to Mr. B, did you hear that? He's just said that he's going to kill you. I said, well, that's not going to happen. Walked back down to the garden. Mr. B was my shadow. I'm in the kitchen. He stayed outside in the garden. I'm making dinner, chopping something up. And I've heard Mr. B go into that, you know that whining that cats do when they're about to ready to set off into a fight? That's what he was doing. And as I was chopping up the vegetables, I thought, there's my boy, sorting another cat out. And then I heard the dog growl. And I heard Bill give out this most dreadful shriek. And I knew immediately something was wrong. Dropped the knife, went outside. Next door's dog had him in his mouth, and he was ragging my beautiful cat like a rag doll. I'd stood over the dog, and I started punching it to no effect. Bill was screaming, the dog was growling. Something had the presence of mind to tell me to stop, stand still, and I watched this arm come up, and I dropped down onto this dog's rib cage with every ounce of force I had, and it was like a jelly. His rib cage wobbled like a jelly. He spat Bill out. Bill ran up the top of the garden. The dog went the other way. He's now got a white beard because of Bill's fur. I waited for Bill to return. He returned, took him to the vet. Cat's all right. So as I'm coming home, the whole thing had disrupted my day. And I said to Bill, you owe me one. So I'm at work, a couple of weeks later, could be a couple of months. I'm at work, and one of my clients was a bodybuilder. So I'd said to him, Martin, chest exercises. I want to sort of build my chest up a bit. So he gives me these exercises. Spent about a week at this client's house. Came in the following day, I think it was on a Friday. Martin, my chest is really sore. Have you been doing any warm-ups, Ray? No, I haven't. So I thought, okay, do some more warm-ups. There's an important part of that story which I have to tell you. On a Wednesday, as I'm driving back from the job, the voice inside my head said, you're going to die. And I'd got home, and it troubled me so much that I rang my mum. Picks up the phone. Nah, was machst du denn? She says to me, Mum, I've just been told that I'm going to die. Who told you that? She said. I said, the voice. Her reply back was, oh. Now, I was looking for sympathy, or empathy, should we say, but she wasn't having it. She'd already given me enough warnings. Put the phone down. Was troubled by the answer, but didn't think anything of it. Okay, it's just the way it is. That's just the way Mum is. We're now getting into Sunday morning. Still got chest pains. Still thinking it's because I hadn't warmed up, hadn't done anything like that. Further on into the evening, playing guitar, having a beer, smoking the weed. Time for bed, Ray, you got work in the morning. Gets down to the house, gets into bed. Mr. B sleeps on the sofa, left him there downstairs. Went up to bed, lay on my side. That was when the pain started. I'm thinking, this is really bad muscle pain, Ray. You need to do something about this. Sprung out of bed, knocked out 20 press-ups. Must have opened up the block vessel, I'm assuming. Felt great, felt alive again. I knew it was just heart problems, chest problems, muscle problems. Get back into bed, laid on my side, back out of bed even quicker this time. I only managed to pull about another 10 press-ups. Thinking, I'm really going to have to take care of myself. Third time I get into bed, the alarm bells start ringing in my head. The pain was just, I can't describe it. I've now got my legs over the side of the bed, gasping for air. The inner voice is going, "You're in trouble, fella. You're in real trouble. What am I going to do? Go downstairs. You need to ring for an ambulance." Come downstairs, hit the front room light. Mr. B is all curled up in the corner of the sofa, and he's propped up and looked at me. I don't know whether any of you are cat owners or dog owners, but you know when they know that something's wrong with you. And my answer to him was, as I heard him say, "Poof!" I went, I know, B. I'm in a really bad way. I had no clothes on, stark naked. It was the day I was born. Went to the cordless phone, and in the UK, if you want an ambulance, you hit 999. So I've got the cordless phone in my left hand. I've hit 1, 2, out. On the floor, just passed out. The next thing I recall or remember at that moment, the next thing I feel and smell is the most fishy smelling breath you can imagine. My eyes have opened, and there is Mr. B looking at me. And he's licked my nose. I mean, a cat's tongue is not, it's like a rasp, isn't it? I've looked at him, and I've realised that you're in big trouble, Ray. Looked at the cordless phone, hit the last 9, bang. Got to the operator. "Yeah, operator, how can we help you?" Slow down, she said to me, slow down. "What's wrong?" "Oh, really bad chest pains, can't breathe." "Sit down," she said, "sit down, don't move. Paramedics are on the way to you." Now it's close to midnight. I live in a small place called Dartford. It's not a big town, so, it kind of shuts at 9 o'clock. So, you can hear a pin drop. So the first thing I'm thinking, I'm still on the phone to the paramedic. I've not been brave enough to listen to the recording. You can do that in the UK. And I've realised that I'm stark naked. There's no way I'm getting in that ambulance naked. It's just not going to happen. So I went upstairs, I'm still on the phone to her, puffing and panting to the emergency services. I pick out my favourite T-shirt, my tracky bottoms, and get me bag. And because my mum was not too well at that time, my sister and I would get your hospital bag, always have your hospital bag ready, Mum. So that's in my mind, and I'm wandering around, putting stuff in, need that. And I sat back down on the sofa where Bill was curled up when I first seen him when I turned the light on. And he sat next to me. And off in the distance, I could hear the siren, the ambulance siren, getting closer and closer. The operator told me, "Leave the front door open, we'll just come straight in." And do you know what? My oxygen levels were dropping so much, and I'll never forget this, I was at one with that sofa. I just sunk so much into it, had my hand on Mr. B, and we just waited. Paramedics came in, walked me out into the back of the ambulance. I was 47 at the time, but I felt like I was 97. Just this sort of staggering out, shocked really that I was in this condition, because I was working out. And they got me into the back of the ambulance. There was a guy called John. He drove the ambulance, and there was a beautiful lady called Rebecca, who was the other paramedic. "Sit down, fella," she said, "sit down." Now, bearing in mind I've been smoking, had a real passion for peanuts and raisins, chocolate-covered peanuts and raisins. And I don't know if you know this, but when you go into part of the symptoms of heart trouble is that you start to vomit. So I'm laying out on this gurney, and it's like a scene out of The Exorcist. So the paramedic, Rebecca, says to me, "I see what your problem is. You've just eaten too much." So she turned her back, was doing something to get, I don't know what it was, to put the sticky things on you to monitor your heart. As she's turned her back, this voice said inside my head, because I'm a cheeky sod, like, you know, if ever there's a time to check out, now is the time to check out. I don't know why I said this, I put my chin on my shoulder, and the next thing, I was on the other side. Well, my soul was. And I was aware I was dead. I won't go into the details of what I'd seen on the other side because time is limited. But the next thing I know is I'm awake in the back of the ambulance. Propped myself up on my elbow, looked up at Rebecca. I went, "You all right?" She went, yeah. I said, "I'm really sorry about that." She said, "Why are you sorry?" I said, "Oh, I was just on the other side there." "Do you go on the other side a lot, Ray?" Yeah, I come from a family of seers. I said, "If you park up, I'll make you a cup of tea and I'll tell you all about it." No, she went. She leant across me, and in our ambulances they have a red digital clock. And she leant across me and she flicked it. She went, "You are unbelievable." I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on here, but something has certainly happened. She went, "You died, Ray. Your eyes were in the back of your head. This clock, you died at exactly 12 o'clock. She went, "It just went to zero." Oh, all right then. But I still couldn't see what the problem was, because I felt great. I felt literally great. I thought it was just one big mistake. We're still outside your house, Ray. You know, if we're resuscitating somebody, we can't drive off. We have to wait until we do as much as we can to you. Well, all right. We take off. Surreal effect, looking out the ambulance window, seeing the blue lights flashing off the side of the houses. We get to A&E, bang, the doors open, boom, you hear, it was just like ER. Do you remember ER? Cardiac patient, 47 years old, and I'm thinking, no, they still haven't got this. They've got the wrong guy. The doors are banging open into the ER crash room. I think there was about 5 or 6 staff in there. And I'm thinking, I'll explain it all to them later, because they've obviously got this wrong. It's just there's nothing wrong with me. You know? The next thing, as I'm lying on the gurney, this most softest of Irish voices says to me, "We need your next of kin's telephone number." And I've turned and looked at her, and I went, "Am I that bad?" She went, "You are." I said, "Well, this is my mother's telephone number, but please don't ring her because she's not well, and if I survive this, you know, the trauma that will bring to her will probably make her worse." They went, "Okay," you know. So the 9 resuscitations went on. It's about an hour and a quarter the whole event was. And I'll just touch on a few things, because the isolation that I felt, the fear that I felt, was so much, and I'm still embarrassed this day, that I lost control of all bodily functions. And that disturbed me an awful lot. It was just out of the norm. I was aware that death was in the room. I'd seen death within the room. It glided around the gurney where I was. I felt cold. I felt clammy. As I said, I knew that I was dying. Sometimes I would come back to my body with my nose on the ceiling tiles, the sensation of falling back into my body. At one point, I was just like this, kneeling on my forehead, and I could watch the paramedics do everything that they were doing to me. And there was a guy to my left called Barry, who I got to know afterwards. He said to the cardiac arrest team, "If this doesn't bring him round, nothing will bring him round." And I remember looking at him, because I was like now eye level with him. I could feel the cold and clamminess of my forehead. And I looked down at my beautiful body, and I felt sad that I'd put her through this. I say she because I don't know why I say she, and just to make a joke of it, I call her she because I've got the hair and I'm slowly growing the boobs as I get older. So it kind of suits. Looked at Barry thinking, he doesn't know this is going to hurt me. And that defibrillator is, it's a raw, white, hot pain. My teeth had cracked. They cracked a couple of ribs. Then it was over. And I felt it was over. It was like the storm had suddenly stopped. Just this wonderful, calming sensation. They wheeled me up to the ward. Next morning, I'm on morphine. Rebecca comes to see me, but she brings a friend with her. Here he is. Here's the guy I'm telling you about. I'm on morphine. I was happy. All right. You don't know how lucky you are, she said. She said, we were parked up close to your house. Otherwise, we would have been coming to just a body. Okay, let that go. About an hour after that, do you remember Barry sitting on my forehead? He comes in. He comes in with this stride of, and as he's coming in, he's just sort of shaking his head. He stood right next to me, and he said, you, I can't swear, you are bizarre. Bizarre. I said, why? He said, some of the things that you were doing when we were resuscitating you, you really frightened us. He said, it's just something we hadn't seen before. So as I said, I can't go into that because we haven't got a lot of time. I get discharged, and this is where the gap of care started to come in. I couldn't understand how I was allowed out of hospital. I just couldn't get it. They'd obviously said he's okay to go home, you know. But I've missed another important fact, and I do apologise for that. They decided they was going to do an angiogram on me about the third day that I was in hospital. Did an angiogram with me, and I'm in there. Would you like to be put to sleep, or would you like to have a look and watch on the screens of what we do to you? Ooh, I'd love to see that, thanks. Doctor standing next to me, theatre staff are in there. Doctor says, we're going to leave the resus machine between your legs, just in case you decide to go again. He said, so you're the man who's been frightening my nursing staff? I said, yeah, I'm really sorry about that. He said, I've heard you're a seer. Yeah, because I've spoken to the other staff. You know. I said, yeah, I am. Come from a family of seers. Do you see anything wrong with me? I thought, can you do this? Can you work on me? And then, we'll have this, you might as well get me a cup of tea and we'll just, just kind of rock with it, And I beckoned him down. He came down in front of me. I said, do you know what's wrong with you? Yeah, he said. I said, can I touch you? Thinking about the sterile reasons, all that sort of stuff. He said, yeah. I said, you've got 5 things wrong with you. I touched him on his stomach. And I called him back in. I said, am I correct? He said, yeah, you are. I went, do you have trouble pooing? And he blushed. He said, I do. Is there anything you could do for me? He said. And I automatically said yes. Put my palm to him, did what I had to do, then I got wheeled out into the recovery room. As I'm in the recovery room, one of the female crash team has come out and said to me, can I be really unprofessional? So I'm going to have to fast forward. Just got my 5-minute call. Where did that time go? I do apologise. We're going to spin forward. I spotted what was wrong with her. Seen her husband on her, he's an athlete, said your husband's got this wrong with him. And she went, yeah. Get home. Now decided to go for care, for the gap of care. Really struggled here. Some of the psychiatrists who I was seeing, some of the counselling therapists I was seeing would cry in front of me. I remember one beautiful lady, she just sobbed in front of me and said, I don't know what to say to you, Ray. And I thought I ended up being the healer for her. So I came home, went into 5 years of self-imposed isolation. Lost my family. Family didn't know who I was. Really troubled. Gave a talk at the hospital that saved my life. At the end of the talk, paramedic gets up, big guy, says, "There's an advertisement here, and I think you might be interested in it." And it was to study to be a psychologist and a therapeutic counsellor. I took that piece of paper, finished this year, doing my hours. I work for a charity in the UK, only deal with trauma, because that's all I know. I refuse to do anything else. And I think this was part of the problems, is that I was passed from one person to another person. I was almost like an experiment. "Oh, give him to me, I'll give him a go. And all it did was destroy me even more, hence the 5 years of isolation. So as the course is coming to an end, I've obviously come to IANDS just by pure fate. Met the beautiful Lilia. Lilia has been so, I just can't tell you how much you've changed my life.
Lilia rocks.
Lilia does rock. Right, and that's sort of really, I know I'd said I'd try to break it down, but I've kind of got carried away with what sort of happened to me. So, maybe you'll invite me back and I'll give you the other side of things, the spiritual side of things. But the whole purpose of me really being here is to explain about the gap of care and the impact that it has upon us as survivors, stroke experiencers. It's just profound. I'm blessed. I lost my mother, never had the chance to tell her why I went into isolation, never had the chance to tell her why I didn't love her anymore, all of that. So I carry that guilt just like bags. And nobody has ever has been able to becalm that feeling that I still have. But it's a learning curve, and now I'm here. And the whole purpose is, God rest my mother, you are here to help others. And that is now my mantra. That's my philosophy of life. And I'm blessed to still be here. 2 heart attacks at Christmas, 1 in March this year. In the MRI machine, they do a stress test on the heart. Heart stops while I'm inside the MRI machine. Became aware of the body breakdancing because suffocation is a dreadful way to die. They pull me out. Heart starts. I get on my motorcycle. Drive back home through London, and was determined to be standing here today to speak to you all. So, thank you. If you have any questions, we've got probably 10, 15 minutes to answer a few, so if not, I'll keep babbling on. Yes, lovely lady.
Do you have any friends from earlier in your life who have seen the changes in your life?
No. Because of most of the friends who I had then were smoking and drinking partners. When I was discharged from hospital, I decided to be a little bit sneaky beaky, get home and I think, oh man, I haven't had a joint or a drink for 4 days. Rolled myself one, I'm in my sound room, I've got the music going. Take 2 puffs. The next thing I know, I'm on my knees on all 4s. So that's why I decided to stay away. Sir, nice to see you again.
Question, what should, we've talked about the gap of care. What should the care look like? What should have been done in an ideal world to take care of you after this experience?
I needed to meet Raymond O'Brien.
Sorry?
I needed to meet Raymond O'Brien. I needed to meet somebody with the experience of a death, or very similar, but they also had to have had the correct training. I think if you can find somebody like me, then you're onto a really good thing, because I've seen both sides of it. And this hence, between 2 worlds. I've still got 1 foot in the spiritual world and 1 foot in this world. And that is the problem. And it's it's a massive problem, because the longer time that I live, the more I understand about how to treat others. And it's a hard thing to do. So what I'm doing now is, hence the course, hence finishing it up, And what my intentions are to do is, my mission is to have a raised ranch. So to have horses, abused horses, again, it would suit the character of those who are coming, those who have been, horses that have been traumatized. I have a real affinity with them, and since working with them, I know that others do too. So that's what I'd like to do. I want to combine my traditional teaching of what I'm learning at the moment, coming to an end, and I want to integrate that, interweave that with my own experiences. Many who I've seen on my course just don't get it. And I mean that with the greatest respect. I genuinely do. And I don't want to come across as dissing anyone's knowledge here. That's my intent. It's not my intent at all. My intentions are to develop a working therapeutic model that people can come to Ray's Ranch, and then they can be taught my working model, or at least the basics, and then they can be sent back out to the medical profession. And I'm very fortunate that at this moment I do deal with 3 cardiac hospitals. One is St. Bartholomew's Hospital in Whitechapel. It's been there since, I don't know, teaching unit. I gave a talk there last year, and the very same question that you have asked me, they have put to me. I was at the British Institute, where the heart consultants have gathered us all together and said, the reason why we've asked you to come here is because many of you are surviving, but you're coming back with psychological problems, and this is why we've asked you here. And so we're getting on it in the UK. I spoke to another guy called Marco, I won't give his last name, but he is one of the go-to guys for cardiac arrest survivors. And I had the opportunity to ask him, so if I was to come to you and ask you, how would you treat me? Do you know what his answer was? I would use validated working models. And that's the problem that we're having. But thankfully, the National Health Service realise this, and that's where we are, sir.
What is it they realize?
Sorry?
What is it they realize? You said National Health
Sorry,
realizes
they're starting
what?
to realise that their own working models are not applicable to survivors, because many of us are committing suicide. We just become so exasperated that the other side, going home, is a better option than having to sit in front of others, to be medicated, just to quieten us down. Medication brings isolation. Hence, when you're isolated, you're on your own. Home is a good idea. I won't lie to you. Only once it's happened to me, I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to commit suicide. And you know what? It was the most beautiful feeling to leave here. It was just, I'm going. Nothing mattered. But something went, I don't know whether it was my mother, she's since passed. No, you don't. You've got too much to do here. And that was enough for me still to be here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Raymond, I wanted to ask you if you thought your childhood experiences, which led you to be awakened and aware that you were a seer, do you think they've helped you deal with the expanded experiences you've had? Yes,
that's a wonderful question. One of the cardiac sisters at the cardiac rehab had said to me, because no one had ever told me this, and because of the oxygen starvation, it's obviously left my brain not in the way that it was before the event. What are you going to do, Raymond, now you can't do your work anymore? Huh? No one's ever told me that. I said, well, I panicked, just like Sparky the horse. I'll rent a room here, and I'm a registered healer, and I'm allowed by the NHS, if I'm a registered healer, they allow me to work in hospitals. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, I'm a seer. What do you see? I see illnesses, I hear souls. I thought, they're just going to lock me up. What do you see? Well, all sorts, And about 2 years before, I'd realised that I could see cancer, or smell it. Do I have cancer, she said to me. I thought, blimey, I'm here for cardiac rehab. I'm not here to tell you what's wrong with you, but, there are caveats. I don't just crash into it and go, yeah, this is what's wrong with you. I made sure that she was of sound mind to ask me that question. I said, you have cancer. Yeah, you have got cancer. I said, turn around. She turned around, she's now got her back to me, finger came up, touched her under her left shoulder blade. It's just here. It's a millimetre in size, but it's asleep. She turned around, she had a look of thunder. I thought, you're in for it now, dude. You shouldn't have said that. She said, for your information, it's not a millimetre, it's 1.2 millimetres, and it matters. She said, where your finger was where the surgeon took a tumour 70 millimetres in diameter off the back wall of my lung. Do you still want to work here? She said. I'd love to. I ended up working 18 months on a chemo unit, which developed my skills. And people were saying to me, you must be mad working in a hospital because they are going to slaughter you if you get something wrong. But that's what I needed. I needed that affirmation of what you're doing, what you are doing actually is happening. The nurse who I spoke to, they'd actually taken off her left breast. So you can imagine when I got onto the cardiac unit. So to your question, yes, very much. And it's still happening.
Hi, Raymond.
A lovely lady.
It was a wonderful talk. I have a couple of questions.
Yes, please.
First off, so you had multiple cardiac arrests, like multiple times that your heart stopped.
Yeah.
How many? 5, 6, 7, 8?
Nine in the ER room, and once, so they tell me, when Bill brought me back, the heart started again. So
10.
10
Okay, so
times.
let's say approximately 10.
Yes, yes.
All right. And you clearly told us that you had near-death experiences, that you went out of body
Yeah.
on some of them. So one of my questions is, did you have an out-of-body experience with all of them, with some of them, or are you really not sure?
Some it was just darkness.
Mm-hmm.
One was absolutely terrifying. I went to a place called the Grey. I didn't know. I termed it the Grey. I met a wonderful researcher called Tim Tobias. We spent 2 years, and he psychologically debriefed me, but in the most sensitive way. And I think only because he'd been doing it for 20 years, he knew what to ask. I mentioned the Grey to him, and what did you see? There was a guy from California who came over to see me, had a brain tumour, and he'd heard about me through the Healing Trust. And on one of the experiences, which was a terrifying one to me, I found myself in a place I wouldn't recommend to anyone. Everything was grey, the sky, the people were shuffling along like they were leaving a football stadium. And because the soul is small, I found myself next to him. And I started floating up, came at eye level to him, and he went, Ray? I went, Dave? He went, what are you doing here? I said, I don't know, Dave. And as I've got to eye level, I could look above the heads of everybody. And whipping across the heads of them was the carbon black wind. It was like carbon barbed wire. Complete difference to my first experience when I first died in the back of the ambulance. The wind was the first thing that met me. And it went through me. It was like the warmest, most wonderful sensation. So the differences were stark.
So you had both positive as well as distressing near-death
Yes,
experiences.
yes,
It was
yeah.
a mixture of experiences.
Yes,
Wow,
yes.
that's incredible. My second question is that many people who've had near-death experiences find their intuitive abilities are increased afterwards, whether you noticed that as well.
I love that question. Now the intuition leads my life. It controls my life, or aids me, should I say, in the most mundane aspects of my life. So if I'm traveling to London, what way do I go into London? And it's got to such a point that I developed a method. I call it the cup method. And it was that affirmation again of, and I'm sure we've all done it, we picked the phone up, I knew it was you. I knew that was going to happen. Or if you don't move the cup, you'll knock it over. So this was the most simplistic way that I could start to understand about the intuitive side. So I started to hone that, to sharpen that up. And now, as I said, it leads my life. It's kind of like the intuition. I knew it was going to be a struggle to get here. I knew something profound was going to happen, hence the 2 heart attacks at Christmas, one in March, and then, the heart stopping again in the MRI machine. So it's almost forewarned is forearmed. So the intuition has taught me not to have a fear of death, which I have no more. The only fear I have is the pain of death. But because of the last heart attacks now, it was just like being branded. I just can't describe the pain. I've tumbled down the road off motorcycles. I know what it is to be in a lot of pain, but the pain of death is something that I've become quite accustomed to but only because of the intuition.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.